that the Capitol Police will tell us right now is that the leaders of the House and the Senate are secure in their words. Ever since the days of the Cold War, there were plans to evacuate the government if that need be in the case of war, taking them to the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia and a huge bunker that was put there. They called that the Doomsday Hotel, and that seemed to be a scenario that we did no longer have to consider right now. However, they are, the leaders of the House and Senate of the government, are, according to Capitol Police, in a secure location. The Capitol, its 19 buildings at this point, have been evacuated for the day, and all we can say is that security there is extraordinary. Paul Wagner describing the scene downtown is the same way as well.
We're going to go to one of our reporters now. Let me be clear on which one. We're going to our Bob Barnard. Okay, Bob, tell us where you are. What can you see?
What we see is a lot of controlled chaos down here, Lark and Michael. We're going to take a look here. We are at Connecticut and K downtown. Many people are trying to go home. Many buildings around the White House have been evacuated, including the Treasury building, the Commerce Department, Interior, and the State Department. We started off, frankly, down at 15th and H in the vicinity of the Treasury building. Lots of fire trucks out, lots of police. Secret Service agents out in the street directing traffic, and you see here we're right outside the Farragut North Metro Station. People are not, I would not say panicked, they are stunned, and quite a few, frankly, are angry. We've spoken to people who were here on convention business and said this is just unbelievable when they first heard what happened in New York. I actually spoke to a tourist from Ireland, and he said we're accustomed to this kind of terrorism, but he said he had never seen or felt anything like this. And there are a lot of unmarked police vehicles cruising through the city. There is right now, I believe what they're calling, Don Watchwood, my photographer, when we got separated, spoke to Alan Editor, the fire spokesman. What did he call it? A code red? Code E for the fire department here in the District of Columbia, which means they wanted everyone going back to the fire stations and standing by. Even off-duty fire people called in today. And as you can see, this is, we're not even just right after 11, and many, many buildings in downtown D.C. have been evacuated, Lark and Michael. People here not really knowing what to do. They're just, rather upset. And many of these people, I don't think, frankly, and I hadn't until about 15 minutes ago, heard that the Twin Towers in New York City had collapsed. Most of these people know what happened in New York City and also at the Pentagon, but the word that those actual towers collapsed is going to be news to a lot of these people who are on their way home at this hour.
Bob, you mentioned something that we hadn't mentioned before, that September is a big convention month here in the city. A lot of groups come in for conferences, for meetings, so you have a lot of people in the city now. After that sort of August recess, the city gears up again. I was taking a quick look at the daybook. Many, many conferences were planned for today. Many groups in town.
Bob, hang right there for a second, because I just want to point out a clarification. Arlington schools are not closed. The school children are inside, and the administrators are allowing parents to come and pick them up, but they're not taking the kids out. The kids are in school. If you're a parent or guardian, you can come and pick up your child from the Arlington schools. We do want to make that clarification.
Okay. Also, our producer was giving us some information as well. Let's about Metro. We do want to sort out about the status of Metro, because Bob, some trains are running. Bob, can you shed any light on that about the Metro trains?
Yeah, I don't know how much cable we have here, but we're going to try to walk over here. Obviously, people are going down into the Metro station. Once you hang here, Don, I'm going to see just if I can get a sense of whether are the trains running, sir. The trains are running.
All right, this gentleman
just coming off the Metro says the trains are running. So all these people who are on their way home, at least for now, will be able to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bob. And thank you for clarifying that, because obviously we had some misinformation on that earlier.
Sure.
We also have, if you can just hold on one second, I just want to say that D.C. police are now saying they will only respond to 911 calls. Anyone who sees anything suspicious should call 311. 311 is that number that you call for something where you want to talk to the police, but it's not an absolute emergency. So they're only going to respond to 911 calls. If you see anything suspicious in the District of Columbia, call 311. All
right, I want to go now to our reporter, Beth Parker, who's at Union Station. And Beth, what happened to you? Beth, can you tell us what happened when you tried to get on a train? What kind of train were you on, Beth? We don't have her. We'll try to get back to Beth, because I'm not sure if she was on a Metro train or was Beth trying to get to New York by train. Not sure. Okay, we're going to check in with our Beth Parker, who we're told was turned around, and we're going to clarify, where she was trying to go, because obviously it's an experience that many others will be having as well.
Right now, though, we are going to go to John Hanrahan. He is at Arlington Hospital. John, we're going to assume that this has been one of the receiving stations for any possible casualties from the Pentagon incident. John Hanrahan at Arlington Hospital. We hope to have him for... John, are you there right now? Okay, we'll be checking in with John
shortly. Because obviously that's something we do want to find out about, injuries, casualties at the Pentagon here locally. John, can you hear us?
While we try to get John connected, try to get John.
A man about 50 years old, short hair, military bearing, and he pulled his oxygen mask off as they were taking him out of the ambulance, and I heard him breathe to the ambulance attendants, "I'm basically okay," before they wheeled him in. There is a huge trauma team here ready. There must have been about 50 doctors and nurses receiving that ambulance, and only a handful of them attended that man. The rest of them are lining up in groups to handle other patients who we are told are on the way. Arlington Hospital has been told they will get about 15 patients from the Pentagon. I spoke to a couple of Arlington paramedics. They describe most of the injuries they've seen as non-life-threatening. There were some second and third degree burns, but non-life-threatening. The patients who are worse off have been helicoptered to Washington Hospital Center in Washington, D.C. They have a burn unit there. Arlington Hospital Center has been told to expect about 10 more patients, and I can tell you they look ready to take them right now. Although traffic is very, very slow throughout Arlington County. Everything is gridlocked. People are heading home. They're obeying the laws. They're very somber looking. Police are doing their best, but there's just tons of vehicles on the road, and it's very hard for the ambulances to make quick time here to Arlington Hospital.
John, let's just go over the numbers as you know them. How many have been taken there to Arlington that we know about?
I am told about a half dozen patients, but I was told that by an observer, not the hospital. I was told by the hospital that they were told by authorities to expect about 15 patients to here.
And do we know how many were transported to Washington Hospital Center?
Do not know.
And John, no one has spoken of any numbers of fatalities at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Two people I saw here who saw most of the patients come in said the people looked in pretty good shape. Some of them were suffering from smoke inhalation, but they looked like they were going to survive. That is not confirmed.
Understand, John.
Okay, we're going to check back with you in a little bit. Right now, though, I believe we're going to go back down to our Bob Barnard, who's on K Street. Bob, go ahead.
All right, Michael and Lark, I'm standing here in the midst of the people here at Connecticut and K, people going to the Farragut North Metro Station. With me is Warren Fisher, an investment broker here in Washington. Tell me about what happened in your office and what you're trying to do right now.
Well, in our office right now, they just shut us down. We have, of course, our corporate office in New York, and we have hundreds of associates and friends at the World Trade Center. We can't make contact with those folks for obvious reasons, and it's just a very, very bad day.
Were you watching what was going on in New York City at work?
Yes, I mean, typically we have the monitors on, all of the cable stations on, and, you know, to my amazement, I'm seeing the tower just tumble, and I'm thinking that it was a demolition of something, or, you know, I did not realize.
At that point, you didn't know the planes had hit them?
Right. I did not. It was just unfathomable for my mind, because, as I said, I'm in New York all the time. I got a lot of friends at Oppenheimer, right there in the World Trade Center, and right now I'm just thinking about all my friends and what a travesty this is.
Thank you, Warren Fisher, on his way home here today. As with many other people, as we take a look around here, Don, these folks are going, many of them, to the Farragut North Metro Station. And as we were able to confirm just a short time ago, Lark and Michael, the Metro trains, at least here in downtown, are running. Many office buildings. Again, we started out, frankly, I started out trying to get to Amtrak to go to New York City and was told the trains weren't running. So get to the White House, where we heard there might be smoke. It turned out there wasn't. But then, of course, the situation at the Pentagon. And I got out of a cab at 15th and H, and that was right outside the Treasury Department. There were fire trucks, plainclothes Secret Service agents directing traffic. The place was basically shut down. People standing there, not in a panic, but very confused, stunned. Some people visibly angry who knew what was going on. And now that was at about 9:45. So now an hour and 15, 20 minutes later, you see much of the city is now shut down and going home. People, frankly, not sure what could happen next. There has been a lull now for a while, but I'll tell you, at about 10:15, I was down at 17th and Constitution, right across from the ellipse. And we heard 2 loud booms. And many of the tourists heard that and were very concerned. Some people thought then it may have been, frankly, a sonic boom of a jet aircraft, which we minutes later saw high above the White House flying around, some kind of Air Force jet. Here you are again looking live, Connecticut and K Street, as people, basically the city, I would not say is being evacuated, but people are leaving their offices in a 3 or 4 block radius of the White House. Buildings are shut down, which includes Treasury, as far out as Interior and State and Commerce. And again, some confusion, but it's controlled, not a lot of panic. But I want to do this right now is switch to some unedited videotape that we have in our live truck. Max, if you want to roll that tape, folks, this is unedited, but this will show you what things look like out around 17th and Constitution at about 10:15 this morning. And there were a lot of people not knowing what to do, many tourists, obviously. We had lots of traffic. That was a government truck there, lots of government people out and about, and fire trucks, as you'll see probably shortly, passing us, not knowing where they were going to, but that was just a short time after those 2, what sounded like explosions to us. It may have been sonic booms, because shortly after that, as you see, a Metro Police motorcycle officer heading down toward the Lincoln Memorial, because that's where we heard the explosions, what sounded like explosions coming from. It may in fact have been just a sonic boom, but we're not sure. We haven't seen much in the way of jet fighter aircraft high above downtown Washington since that time, about, I'd say 45 minutes to an hour ago. But we want to just, if you can bear with us, keep this tape rolling here to show you this again, scenes down at 17th and Constitution. About a half hour, you can see the Washington Monument in the background. They cleared the grounds around the Washington Monument because, of course, what a lot of people down here were fearing was that, my goodness, if terrorists could do what they did in New York City, then perhaps, as we know with the Pentagon, perhaps, if that's what that was, that there, the Washington Monument could perhaps also be a target. And you'll see here in just a minute, Lark and Michael, I believe we'll see some fire trucks going. We did not know where we're going, but then we have heard since then that many of the fire trucks have been sent back to their fire stations on orders of the fire administration here in the District of Columbia.
We're going to ask you to stand by right now because we have D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton with us on the telephone.
Congresswoman, tell us where you were when you first got word of this. Were you in the Capitol? Were you at the Capitol?
I was not in the Capitol because I was preparing press statements for 2 back-to-back press conferences, one at 10 and one at 11. When I saw what had happened, I called my office and thought I still should come in. But once they got to the Pentagon, I called my office and said to my staff, they are now targeting high-profile offices in D.C. It cannot be long before they get to the Capitol. I'm ordering my congressional staff and my White House staff to go home and wait for a call. About 20 minutes after that, the Capitol closed down. The Capitol got the point after that they should close down. I do want to say to my constituents here in Washington and my friends in the region that you should stay at home, that you should stay calm, that you should not go looking for loved ones. The police are doing a good job getting people out of the city, and the more people that come in, the worse off we are. If you were fortunate enough not to be downtown, stay where you are. I live 9 blocks from the Capitol, and so I am a little concerned that if they were targeting, that they not target up this far. There are 2 planes apparently missing, so we don't yet know what is going to happen. Apparently, Pittsburgh, places in the Midwest have also been targeted. And the best thing for those of us who are here to do is to turn on Channel 5 and try to find out what's happening that way and not to try to find out any other way.
Congresswoman, let me just ask you about the 2 planes. Is that coming from news reports, or have you been briefed as a member of Congress about these 2 planes? Is that from news reports?
No, that's coming from news reports, okay. And I must say, you all know a whole lot more than any member of Congress does right now.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Congressman Norton, I want to also ask you, have you been talking to anyone in your leadership? Is there any special meeting that's going to take place? What's going on? What's the response to the government, or are we just waiting, or are you waiting for the president to make the next move?
There was a meeting of the leadership at 10 a.m. I think that meeting resulted only in the close down of the Capitol. I think everyone is waiting for the president to indicate what comes next, including members of Congress.
Okay, let me just get your thoughts on this day, Congresswoman Norton, as we watch this scene at the Pentagon, as we watch what's happening in New York City. How do you describe this?
Well, I can tell you this. I was a child. I'm a native Washingtonian and was a child during World War II growing up in this town. I never had the slightest fear that any of those bombs would ever come to this Capitol. There were air raids. There were precautions that we took. But what was unthinkable was that there would ever be a bomb attack on a major building in this town. And you see that they closed down Pennsylvania Avenue to keep that from happening. What we haven't learned, however, is how to guard us from even the most ordinary kind of attacks, the kind of attacks that they would have done in World War II when they would have sent a plane in. And I think what the American people, and especially those of us who live in Washington, want to know is how is the government of the United States going to protect the nation's capital from now on?
And Congresswoman Norton, obviously the difficulty with that is what defense can a free society have against the hijacking of a half-dozen commercial airliners simultaneously in a given morning against civilian targets?
Yes, that of course is what makes this so frightening. One has to wonder about what kind of intelligence our country was engaged in. I'm pretty sure these people did not go through metal detectors at airports. There must be other ways to get into airports in order to hijack planes. We have not done our ordinary security, and here we are in the Congress having debates on missile defense.
Congressman Norton, if we could ask you to hold on, what we'd like to do now is to show you some of the traffic alerts. These are being put out by various traffic agencies, including the Department of Traffic, to try and get people out of the city in the most orderly fashion possible. They are urging you now, if you're on that side of the city, to use the Southwest Freeway. We're also being told they're clearing the routes to the 14th Street Bridge so that they can get people out of the district itself. What we're going to do is keep a banner on the lower third portion of our screen that will give you the latest traffic updates as authorities route traffic every which way they can to get people out. And there you see one right now. The 14th Street Bridge at this stage of the game will be outbound only.
Yeah, I do want to mention, there are going to be many, many traffic changes, so you do need to be alert to that. And and obviously what they're doing is they're trying to get the traffic out of the city as quickly as possible is the basic idea. So do expect there will be some diversions, some differences on your ride right now, even though it is just late morning. So I think that's the headline of this message is that don't be surprised if you find some different routes, if you're being diverted, but they are trying to get people out of the city as quickly as possible. So the outbound, they may be changing to what would normally happen later in the afternoon.
Congressman Norton, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
I wanted to ask you, we did have on earlier Dr. James Ogme from the Arab American Institute or Alliance, and he cautioned that he expressed the fear that once again, before we know exactly what has happened, that we are going to jump to blaming the same groups, Arab Americans, who in the past have themselves been victims of terrorist incidents like these, and who unfortunately get blamed in these kinds of situations before we know what's going on. Would you like to add your own caution to that?
I certainly would. I hope we do not compound this tragedy by reaching out to make accusations before the FBI and the CIA inform us of what happened. That is exactly what happened, of course, after the Oklahoma City bombing. And what did we learn? We learned that there were homegrown terrorists here in the United States. What we need to focus on now is how to protect ourselves today and every day thereafter. What we have learned today is that a terrorist attack on a city can have the effect of all-out war. I cannot imagine that it would be any worse if we were in the midst of a war and we do not know how to fully protect ourselves. We in the Congress have a lot of work, and especially the President has a lot of work to do.
What practically, though, can be done in the short term? What are we going to do to get this city back to normal tomorrow, Congressman Norton? What would you suggest?
I believe that the city will be back to normal tomorrow. I think that once an attack like this occurs, you have the full armed services of the United States on alert. And I cannot imagine that we will have an unsafe condition in the nation's capital or in our country tomorrow. And I think everyone ought to retain their confidence in the ability of the armed forces to take care of business once they are on the scene. And now that we have been attacked, we have to understand that we're being protected by our our armed forces combined and have confidence in them. I think they know what to do at times like this. We may not know what to do. Civilians and police who've never had this experience may not know what to do, but people who are trained in war and peace do know what to do, and I have confidence that we'll be back to normal tomorrow.
Congresswoman Norton, it's a pretty bold prediction about normality tomorrow, but we certainly hope normality in the near future. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go to our Bob Barnett because we do want to talk about this developing traffic situation as people are trying to clear out of the areas where they're being asked to leave. So, Bob, what can you tell us?
I don't know if you can see, there's a gentleman there in a dark suit. He is a citizen helping to try to direct traffic through this major intersection here, which is Connecticut and K here. He is directing traffic there from the side. I don't know if you can see the other gentleman in the blue shirt. He's been trying to direct traffic. The lights are working here, but it is I don't want to say utter chaos. I don't want to over dramatize this, but people are just like confused. They don't know where to go. And so, in fact, these two gentlemen who are on their way home have stopped and are trying to direct traffic to get people moving through this intersection. So a lot of people, basically a good chunk of downtown Washington, D.C., 4 or 5 block radius from the White House, people have just left their office buildings, mainly because of the nature of what has happened in New York, but also the unknowing what, if anything, could possibly, with a plane crashing in western Pennsylvania and the explosion at the Pentagon, what else might happen. So as you can see, as we look north on Connecticut toward DuPont Circle, traffic is not moving all that well, and
Bob?
some people are now trying to help, Lark.
Sure. We do want to interrupt you, but stand by there, Bob, because we're going to get to Mike McCurry, President Clinton's former spokesperson. Mike McCurry, you dealt with many crises, nothing like this.
Absolutely nothing like this, although the number of briefings that you sat through in government in recent years in which someone said sooner or later we would confront a day like this were pretty plentiful.
Mike, I wanted to ask you right now, when you look at the situation, of course, President Clinton dealt with the Osama bin Laden as an adversary in Sudan and Afghanistan. What likely can you see the United States as an immediate response before we figure out exactly what happened and who might be responsible? What do you think the interim steps are going to be? What's going on right now at the highest levels?
Well, it is safe to say that throughout our whole system of government, all the resources that are at the disposal to figure out what did happen, who's accountable, who's responsible, that system is working vigorously right now. But it does all the time, and it is pulsing, worldwide all the time, looking for any telltale signs that we're facing this kind of threat. This is obviously something that is substantial enough that they're going to have to really proceed very carefully as they figure out how to figure out the right response. Now, the one thing that is always true at a moment like this is that the story and the reporting and what you hear moves a lot faster than the government's ability to really sift through and establish facts. So the first and most important thing, obviously, is to figure out exactly what has happened and what the vulnerability is and anticipate anything that's coming in the future. And I'll bet you that's what most people in government are properly putting their attention to.
Yeah. Give us some sense, Mike, of what happens or who gets called together, National Security Council. What kinds of meetings are going on right now?
Well, it's watching the White House in the midst of a crisis is kind of a splendid thing because people rise to the occasion. People keep a very level head. There's work to be done. The Situation Room at the White House becomes a good source of information tracking what people are hearing. All the agencies of government that can contribute information are quickly connected via the task forces that exist in most federal agencies. And I suspect, I probably shouldn't, I can only imagine that there is a pretty good game plan in place for a moment like this where all the units of government from the White House on down have a clear understanding what their responsibility is, and people are just executing. What I remember so well the day the Murrow building blew up in Oklahoma City, and we had to deal with a lot of rumor control. Remember, in these same initial hours of that horrible incident, across all the airways, people were coming to the conclusion quickly that it was Arab terrorism responsible, and as we all know, the facts sort out differently over time. So keeping a level head, keeping focused on getting the information that the president and others need, that's what everybody's putting their time into.
Yet, Mike, when you consider the sophistication needed to pull off what happened today, it's hard not to think of one of our main international adversaries as someone who might be responsible.
That is absolutely correct. No question of that.
Thank you for joining us, Mike McCurry, former White House press secretary under President Bill Clinton. We appreciate it.
Pat McGrath, by the way, caught me on the street here, and he's been all over town. If you want to talk to him, he's got the scene on the streets here is pretty remarkable, as you've been reporting.
Yeah.
And, indeed, we do want to talk to Pat. So hand that phone to Pat McGrath.
Here's Pat.
We do want to get Pat. Hold on, before you start, we do want to make mention about various school situations. So Pat, can you stand by just 1 second?
Sure, go right ahead.
Arlington wants us to emphasize that they are not closed, but parents have the option of picking up their children if they choose to do so, but they are planning to keep the children inside. So, Michael, I'm going to do something that a lot of parents are doing. I need to step away just to check on Sky's arrangements while you talk to Pat. I'm sure a lot of parents are doing that same thing.
And at this point, we're also receiving news that all Maryland schools are closed. We're going to specify that, whether that means all schools of higher education, schools, period, are closed. We want to give you the latest information. This is what we're getting from CNN regarding American Airlines having 2 missing planes currently, 2 planes they cannot account for at this point. One of those planes we're receiving preliminary information on may be a plane, Flight 77, a Dulles to Los Angeles flight. That is the situation right now. Now, you remember, Audrey Barnes was over at the Pentagon where they had reported that there was possibly another threat. Audrey is not there right now, but we are going to talk to Patrick McGrath. I want to ask you to hold on one more second, though, Pat, because I want to reiterate, at this point, we may have 2 more missing planes. This would be an incredible result of a day where we might have had as many as a half dozen hijacked commercial jetliners, each of them able to carry 300-400 people. Pat, where are you right now, and what's the scene where you are?
Mike, I'm at 7th and Pennsylvania, and I'm up in a cushy office here because cell phones, that's one of the stories here today. We've become a cell phone dependent place, and cell phones are working very sporadically, so landlines are. But let me say here, we hear sirens and such in the background, the traffic is gridlocked. The important thing here is that there's no panic. There does seem to be a sense that this now, at this point, is precautionary, and that people don't seem to be alarmed about their personal safety. It'll just take people a long time to get out. At the Capitol, that's where things were most tense. That was the first place that I came into, and I walked up to Independence Avenue in the Capitol, and I had my press credentials, thinking that maybe I could get across the line and get a little information. And boy, they turned me back vigorously. And now they've also moved people well away from the House office buildings. I did run into Congressman Amo Houghton. And he was in the dark like everybody else. He's a New York congressman. He said he described the situation as paralysis. He had a personal story. His son, Congressman Houghton's son, has an office in the World Trade Center. But he said he did learn that his son wasn't at the office today. So he was greatly relieved. I talked to some tourist who's right after their tour of the Senate, and one of them, Bert Coswell of Baltimore, said this is kind of the end of the innocence. America, he says, we always think of it as a free and a safe place. It's a sad day for America. He also made the observation, we've awakened a sleeping giant, though. People are going to, who have done this, are really going to have to pay. His friend with him, a World War II veteran, worked with James Forrestal during World War II. Some people have even made the comment, this is Pearl Harbor-like. He said, that Pearl Harbor, it was a military attack. This is more of a civilian attack. There is that distinction, although the loss of life, I don't know how many people were killed in Pearl Harbor, but I suspect the loss of life today is going to be, substantial, and who knows whether it'll be Pearl Harbor-like in its death toll.
Pat, I thank you very much. We're going to ask you to hold on. We're looking there at the U.S. Capitol. Great to see it this morning. With the sun, the smoke, very symbolic of what's gone on across our nation today. We want to give you a recap of a horrific day of events. It started just before 9 this morning when a plane, a commercial airliner, possibly one that was hijacked on a flight from Boston to Los Angeles, drove deliberately into one of the World Trade Center towers. 18 minutes later, another plane, also a commercial jetliner, flew right into the second tower. Those towers, about an hour or two later on, collapsed. We can only assume that there has been a tremendous loss of life. And there you see the scene from New York City, the smoke still billowing over lower Manhattan where the World Trade Center towers are located. In our area, the Pentagon was apparently targeted by what eyewitnesses describe as a large commercial aircraft. That plane hit the Pentagon, and we are trying to figure out exactly where. When we see another camera view, it looks like it hit right towards the side of the building, on the side by 395, where you can see there is a heliport there used by the Pentagon. There's another scene that we'll see here in a second. We've also been monitoring other situations, not the least of which is 2 more missing aircraft, commercial jetliners run by American Airlines, and a major airline plane crash. We're going to get that in a second. Right now, though, we are going to go to our own Fox 5's Holly Morris. Holly, where are you?
Michael, we are in the north parking lot as well at the Pentagon. We actually started over, though, at the 14th Street Bridge near 395 there and had to walk along the river literally to get here and get to you. As you can imagine, we walked through a ton of staff that had been evacuated, many of them simply walking away as fast as they could, then other people as well just standing and watching in disbelief. Then, as we walked across the river entrance of the Pentagon, this is what we saw. It was the makeshift triage area. This is raw tape that you're seeing here of footage we shot literally as we were walking along. And you heard Mike McCurry say that seeing the White House in times of tragedy, you see the staff rise to the occasion. We saw the same thing here with the Pentagon staff. I spoke with a Lieutenant David Guy, and he confirmed to me that these were all staff within the Pentagon who volunteered to help go back in and get the wounded. They were standing by, many of them receiving directions, not knowing exactly what they were going to encounter once they got inside. They were handing out supplies. Lieutenant Guy also told me that there was some personnel from Walter Reed Army Hospital that came over to assist as well, and we did in fact see a Walter Reed bus leave from the scene. We also saw a Fort Belvoir ambulance speed away from the scene. Another thing that my crew heard firsthand, and it was very chilling for all of us as we walked by, was the fact that a soldier was on a two-way with his commanding officer, and then he reiterated to all the others that were standing around in uniform around him, he said that was our commanding officer, and he says they need help to go back in and get the body bags. And I must say that the 3 of us walking that way literally stopped in our tracks, and he turned to some of the soldiers and said, "Are you up for it?" And they said, "Let's go." So that's what I'm talking about when I say we are seeing the staff here rise to the occasion and help with this dreadful scene that we are witnessing firsthand. We also talked with many people, many of the civilian staff within the Pentagon about what unfolded this morning, and many of them, of course, heard the loud boom. One man we were talking with, while we were talking to him, another explosion kind of happened, and you saw him, everyone obviously very antsy, very nervous, and both of those people that we talked to said, you know, they never thought that we would see this day where something like this happened. However, on the flip side, we talked with yet another person who said, I've worked at the Pentagon on and off for 30 years, and in the back of my mind, I always figured that this was just a matter of time. However, I think probably everyone's in agreement when you say you never think today is going to be the day. Now, I know Audrey Barnes is also here on the Pentagon site on the grounds here, and there are reports, people talking about the planes that are unaccounted for, and we did see, not a commercial airliner, but we saw a fighter jet fly overhead not too long ago. So we have a lot of people from within the Pentagon, military and civilian, coming up and asking us for information, because a lot of them don't have much more information than what we have. So everyone obviously very concerned, yet in the middle of this scene right here that we walked through, we just showed you those pictures, the own staff is going to work to help those that perhaps may still be inside. Lark, Michael?
Holly, it is just an incredible day. We do want to emphasize, as you pointed out, American Airlines is now confirming those 2 lost aircraft. One of them was Flight 11, Boston to L.A., and Flight 77, a 757 operating from Dulles to Los Angeles. Tell us again, Holly, your vantage point there at the Pentagon and what you're seeing right now behind you.
Our vantage point right now is the north parking lot, and if you're familiar with the Pentagon, we started literally on the 14th Street Bridge and basically walked along the Potomac River. We crossed the front entrance of what they consider the river entrance of the Pentagon. As you can see, the smoke is definitely getting lighter behind us. It's still billowing from inside the building from what looks to be kind of the right corner. From our vantage point, or what it would look like on your screen, we see, of course, police helicopters that keep circling the area over the top. Just a lot of parked cars here right in front of it. And what you can't see directly behind me are some staff, some military personnel, some civilian staff as well, that are just kind of standing by and watching, and it's eerily quiet because obviously nobody's saying anything, just watching in disbelief. The only sounds that we hear are the choppers overhead, or every once in a while we will hear sirens as emergency vehicles speed by. Lark.
All right, thank you so much, Holly. We want to go now to Beth Parker, who is on the phone. Beth, tell us where you are.
Mark, we are at Capitol Police Headquarters, and what we're seeing here is, first of all, a SWAT team that is deploying here in the parking lot. The downtown is absolutely packed, worse than any rush hour you've ever seen. And we are seeing also lawmakers who are walking, cutting really through the parking lot here as they evacuate the Capitol area. Virginia Senator John Warner came by just a little while ago. Also Kent Conrad from North Dakota. And Kent Conrad used 3 words. He says that first, he wants to make sure that Congress is helping to protect the people of America. Then he says he wants to help America heal and also retaliate. They are speaking in very, very strong words here about the people responsible for these actions today. Around town, all over. I tried to get on an airplane today, tried to get on a train. It is absolutely packed. Everybody well aware of what is happening, and people seem really stunned. There was one woman in particular who I passed as I was driving through downtown, and I could see in my rearview mirror the enormous plume of black smoke above the Pentagon, and I looked across into the lane next to me, and there was a woman who was actually had tears running down her face. This is just unprecedented. It is an unbelievable time. Never seen anything like it in downtown
Beth,
Washington.
stand by for just a second, because we do want to hear more about what happened to you, but we do want to note that United Airlines is confirming that one of its flights from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco crashed near Pittsburgh. So tell us what happened to you, Beth, when you tried to get on a plane. Let's take that incident. What happened?
Yeah, we were actually headed toward National Airport this morning right after the explosions happened in New York, and ended up being diverted as the airports were shut down in New York. We headed through some very difficult traffic, as I said, worse than any rush hour I've seen, into Union Station, and actually got onto the plane, or onto a train. That was a 10:10 train to New York. We know the 10 o'clock train went, but after that they shut down Union Station quickly, scurried us off the train and out of there. Obviously, a lot of disappointed travelers, but certainly people understand, and as I said, really
So basically you were allowed to board a train, but then they said this train's going nowhere, get off. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
The minute we sat down, they started to tell us that there was at least a possibility that that train was not going to leave the station, and probably 15 minutes later we were off the train, out of the station, and I found myself, like an awful lot of people, who found that our cars were locked in the parking lot in the train station.
All right, so now you're at the Capitol Police Headquarters, and you were able to talk to some members of Congress, and you're also watching what police are doing now. So tell us what's going on there now.
Exactly. On the other side, up the street, you could still see that Capitol police officers are putting that yellow police tape that you see at crime scenes all around the Capitol grounds, not just the building itself, but the entire area around the grounds. And we're looking at that, too, here along D Street. We're in the 100 block of D Street Northeast at the U.S. Capitol Police Headquarters. There are sirens. Sirens have never stopped. We have heard them literally for hours, even when they were in the distance. They are there, no doubt about it. And folks are deploying here from Capitol Police Headquarters. We've been told there may be a news conference here. That is not clear at this point. But as I said, members of Congress coming out here and talking already about the nation healing.
Beth, I want to ask you to hold on. We have some news now from American Airlines. There's been a lot of speculation all morning as to just how many people may have been on these apparently hijacked aircraft. We're having some numbers now from American Airlines. It says that one of the planes involved, this was a Flight 11, once again a Boeing 767. This was the Boston to Los Angeles flight. This flight, American Airlines is reporting, had 81 passengers on board, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. Now, also involved, this may be key in our area, has Flight 77. This is a Boeing. These are 2 aircraft that at this point are reported missing. We don't have confirmation that these are among the aircraft that have crashed. Also involved was Flight 77. This is a Boeing 757 operating from Dulles to Los Angeles. 58 passengers on board there, 4 flight attendants, 2 pilots. So this is adding up to 156 people, rather, aboard those 2 planes.
Now, also some numbers from New York City. This is from an unnamed police official saying the number of casualties, and keep in mind that could be fatalities and wounded. Casualties could be in the thousands. Certainly no surprise when you consider that 50,000 people worked at the World Trade Center, talking about the surrounding areas there on the ground. Those two towers have collapsed. So we have people missing on airplanes now, numbering, obviously that could be in the hundreds, depending on how many planes end up being missing, confirmed somewhere under 200. We're talking about the possibility of thousands of casualties in New York City.
American Airlines has also set up a response number. We're not going to give it to you just yet, but we want to tell you that we'll try to get it up for you on our screen. I'll read it to you once, and then we'll try to put it up on our screen as well. This is for customers who have concerns about today, who may have relatives. Yeah. Their response number is 1-800-245-0999. I'll ask our producers to make that available in the form of a graphic that you can all read. 1-800-245-0999 to call American Airlines. Mark?
We are getting word now from Governor Jim Gilmore, because the Pentagon, located there in Virginia, urging Virginians to remain calm. It's a plea we heard from D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton as well, to remain calm. And Governor Gilmore, speaking at a news conference, said there is no evidence of any terrorist attacks in the state except for the Pentagon in Northern Virginia. So we'll hope to bring you more comments from Governor Gilmore just as soon as we can.
And we also would there you see the American Airlines number, 1-800-245-0999. Now, we also do believe it is a United Airlines aircraft that had crashed in southwestern Pennsylvania. So this is not among the two missing planes.
Right.
Different aircraft, different itinerary there. We should also add that at this point, and it may be painfully obvious, if you don't have to leave your home today, certainly to go anywhere around the D.C. area, perhaps this is the best day to stay home, and where things are going to be at least a bit dangerous for you, or just in terms of the logistics of traffic.
That's what we're hearing from our reporters all around the area, that it is gridlock, because obviously that many people were already downtown on their way to work or their daily errands, and so now with people trying to leave, it's going to be a rush hour like you've never seen at midday. So you're right. If you're at home, please just stay home unless you absolutely have to go out.
I was just wondering if Audrey Barnes could be brought back on the line, because we'd like to check in and get we're getting a better view now that the smoke is dissipated. We know Audrey, but on the right-hand side, we do have Holly Morris, who's at the Pentagon. Holly, we're starting to be able to see a little bit better there exactly the impact and the area that it struck of the Pentagon building itself. Holly?
I'm sorry, Michael, you'll have to repeat that because someone else was talking in my ear at the time. What is your question?
I was just going to ask you if from your vantage point there, we're starting to see the smoke dissipate from the point of impact at the Pentagon. Can you give us, are you getting any better viewpoint there of exactly how much damage was done?
We're not getting a better viewpoint as to how much damage was done, but I can confirm the fact that the smoke is dissipating. It's getting lighter. It is dramatically different from what we saw when we first rolled on the scene. We're actually over on the other side of the Pentagon right now. We still have a lot of staffers that are walking up to us, and they are asking us questions as to, do you know what happened? Do you know if it was an airplane? Do you know if it was a bomb? There's a lot of questions around here among the people that just work here. But it looks like right now this scene is kind of dying down as far as the smoke and the fire that we saw earlier. On the other hand, the scene is picking up as we hear sirens coming in, more emergency vehicles coming in, and of course that site of the makeshift triage is very, very busy as they continue to go in the building. I do have a field producer with me who she just ran over there, and she was going to try to get some information as far as what they're seeing once they enter back into the building, what are the types of injuries they're seeing, and basically just what it looks like. We have seen numerous helicopters continue to circle the area, but other than that, we're kind of at a point right now where we're in a holding pattern ourselves. Michael?
I believe Audrey Barnes is there as well. Audrey, we're watching a helicopter circle over the Pentagon. That actually looks more on the Crystal City side. Audrey, what can you tell us? We were concerned a while back about another possible threat. Did that fail to materialize?
Michael, from this vantage point, right on 27, we can still see the flames kind of flaring up on the side of the building there. That was the point of impact of that aircraft earlier this morning, and it has just flared up again. We saw flames shooting out of the side of the building, and there's quite a rescue operation going on right now. We did see at least some patients being airlifted out of there, and we also saw a huge emergency vehicle from Walter Reed Army Medical Center coming in to help with the rescue of people who might have been hurt and on that side of the Pentagon building. But at this point, they still have a very active fire at the point of impact when the plane crashed into the Pentagon this morning.
All right, thank you so much, Audrey. We appreciate that update. We'll check in with you in just a moment. Right now, we want to go to our Paul Wagner, who is live at D.C. Police Headquarters. He has some new information for us. Paul.
Well, Lark, this is what I can tell you. I just spoke with Joe Gentile a few minutes ago. He told me that D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey is here at police headquarters. He's up in the command center. He is taking control of the situation here in the city and is coordinating with the FBI and Secret Service as to how to respond to what is taking place today. All D.C. police officers have been called in from off duty. They're being called into the city. They will be working in 12-hour shifts. In addition to that, Gentile says that all 911 calls are being handled and responded to. However, he said only 911 calls are being handled at this point. He says if you see anyone suspicious, you're to call 311. They are at a heightened state of alert. They are watching all the federal buildings. The streets down here around police headquarters have been shut down, and now it is being ringed by recruits from the training academy. Yellow tape is up around this building. No one is allowed in. All civilians inside have been evacuated. In addition to that, no one is inside One Judiciary Square. And as I mentioned earlier this morning, FBI agents armed with machine guns are surrounding the FBI's Washington Field office, which is just up the street from here. Downtown here, Lark and Michael, it's all you can hear is police vehicles with their sirens going up and down these streets. Listening to the police channels, I can tell you that they're responding to a tremendous number of suspicious packages, suspicious vehicles, suspicious people, the bomb squad going all over the place, bomb-sniffing dogs. And all you can hear down in this area is just sirens going up and down the streets, responding to all sorts of suspicious vehicles. I can tell you at one point there was a very scary situation where there was a large truck parked not far from here. Two people jumped out, and the police were screaming over the radios that two men had just bailed out of a large truck. That turned out not to be a hazardous situation or dangerous situation, but just to give you some flavor, just to give you an idea of the kind of situation that the police are dealing with at this point.
Governor Gilmore is saying he is calling out the Virginia National Guard, putting the Virginia National Guard on alert. Let me be clear, on alert. Any word about the D.C. National Guard?
Don't know about that just yet. They're not letting us into the building, so the best information I can get right now, Lark, is by standing outside the building, talking with Sergeant Gentile, listening to the police radios. And as I stand here, it's just every couple of seconds there are emergency vehicles, police cars, FBI cars, Secret Service, buses, all official vehicles screaming through the streets down here. I can tell you the 3rd Street Tunnel was closed at one point, but it has been reopened, and cars are now going into the 3rd Street Tunnel. As you can imagine, cell phone use is very, very difficult. All the public phones that I can see down in this area are being used by people. There are long lines of people trying to get onto these phones. And back to your original question, I do not have any information about the D.C. National Guard. I did see the Corporation Counsel, Robert Rigsby, a little while ago be put into a patrol car with lights and siren, and he was escorted off somewhere. There was some talk about the mayor coming into this area, and that there was going to be some recruits stationed around One Judiciary Square as protection, but that has not happened at this point. The only protection down here around this in this area is D.C. Police Headquarters at this point. Lark?
All right, thank you so much, Paul, for that update. We got a good sense, though, that obviously this is a time of great nervousness because of what we know has already happened. So understandably, they are responding to anything that looks suspicious.
Right, and we should also point out at this point that Reagan National in Dulles will be closed for at least the next 24 hours. So you're getting that word now. Of course, air traffic nationwide has been stopped at this point, but it looks like at this point Reagan National Airport and Dulles International Airport, according to Associated Press, will be closed for at least the next 24 hours. As Beth Parker reported, train traffic up to New York had been stopped as well, at least in her case and for that time.
We do want to go now to a report from our Will Thomas, who was at Wilson High School, just to give you a sense of how this is affecting many sectors of the city.
Will Thomas here at Woodrow Wilson High School in Northwest Washington. The school district is releasing students as parents or guardians pick them up, not only here at Wilson, but at all D.C. public schools right now. In just the last several minutes, we've seen several dozen parents, some running trying to get their children, the principal inside and administrators and staff trying to keep kids calm. We're stopping some parents and students right now. Ma'am, you're Karen Windsor. Your 15-year-old daughter attends Woodrow Wilson High School. Your daughter Roxana nearby Janney Elementary School, correct? What was going through your mind as this was playing out this morning?
Well, when I first got to Janney, it was lots of confusion. There was crying parents. It was pretty scary.
And Roxana, that's where you attend. What was it like inside school?
Well, my teacher really didn't say anything. She wasn't going to say anything to the class because she didn't want to get anyone worried. But the principal or whatever came and told me that my mom was here, and I started to get really worried, and my teacher told me what happened, and I, almost cried.
So they didn't make an announcement at the school not to scare the kids?
Yeah.
Okay. Chelsea, what about you inside Woodrow Wilson here?
They made several announcements to the school, and everybody was getting kind of worried, and they told us not to worry about it, that they would try to get everything okay, and not to believe the rumors, and they told us every 5 minutes what was going on. And we even watched it on TV. They turned on the TVs and we watched it.
So how did you know that your mother was here? Did they call your name?
Yeah, they announced it.
So the parents are coming to the offices. They announce it over the loudspeaker.
Yeah, a lot of people are leaving.
What was the sense like inside? You guys are a little older. They were giving you constant updates. A lot of panic, a lot of emotions. What was it like?
Some people, I got the chills. I was very nervous, and there was a lot of confusion. The teachers were telling us that it was very scary because they had watched it on TV, but we didn't get to watch it until a couple hours later. It was crazy.
Okay, all right. All of you, thank you. Stay safe. Will Thomas here at Woodrow Wilson High School in Northwest Washington. Now back to you.
Okay.
All right, we do want to go now to Jim McNally, who is with Metro, to give us an update. Jim, can you hear us?
Sure can, Lark. Thanks. As you travel out of downtown, obviously, as you guys have been talking about, there's a lot of traffic in the downtown area and gridlocked in a lot of cases. Part of the problem has been the closure along the mall. Constitution Avenue had been shut down as people tried to come into the city, so that was shut down. You can get out of town now by way of 395 and the 14th Street Bridge. The main and the express lanes are open to outbound traffic. You can see in this camera shot people on foot. There are people that are walking out of the city across the 14th Street Bridge. We suspect these are people that are trying to get to the metro system, or folks that may frankly be a little frustrated with trying to get out by car. The metro system, as far as that's concerned, is operating. However, trains are not stopping at these stations on the blue-yellow line, Pentagon, and at National Airport. And on the red line, trains are not stopping at Union Station. And again, you cannot get into the city by way of 395. That's closed at the Beltway. Route 50 in Virginia is shut down at Washington Boulevard. And Route 1 in Crystal City is shut down northbound at Glebe Road, so you can't get into town. Back to you guys.
Now you have Metro traffic. We do want to make that clear. And what they're trying to do is facilitate people getting out of the city, but expect lots of traffic changes. It is going to be crowded, and also they are reversing some of the lanes so to make it easier to go outbound at this hour.
Right now we are joined by Dr. Gerald Post of, I'm sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Do we want to go to John Henrahan first for the hospital update? Okay, let's go to John Henrahan, and then we are going to get to a terrorism expert. John, do you have some new numbers on injuries?
Yes, I do. Here at the Virginia Hospital Center, Arlington on George Mason Drive, we have 30 patients. More are still arriving. These are coming from the Pentagon site, of course. These do not appear, most of them do not appear to be life-threatening injuries. The worst cases, we are told, are being medevaced to MedStar's burn unit in Washington, D.C. Patients are coming not only by ambulance, they're coming by what appear to be carpool vans, thousands of which, of course, go to the Pentagon every day. Some people are being held in carpool vans, the patients, on military canvas-type stretchers. A Fairfax County police car just roared up a few minutes ago, delivering a case of blood, I suspect from Inova Fairfax Hospital. And moments after that, Jean McGuire, the vice president for nursing here at Arlington Hospital, came out and told reporters that medical personnel at the Pentagon are calling for more supplies. She said they need IVs, they need endotracheal tubes, oxygen tanks, and Arlington Hospital can't give it up because of the patients coming in. I was told by a paramedic from Alexandria that Alexandria Hospital, which apparently is not being as hard hit, is loading a bus of supplies, and those supplies are now heading to the scene of the Pentagon. So we have a steady stream of patients here at Arlington Hospital. The worst, the burn cases are being taken to Washington Hospital Center, the MedStar unit there. Again, our patient count is about 30 here in Arlington.
Thank you so much, our John Henrahan there at Arlington Hospital. We also do want to mention we are now being told that Governor Glendening is issuing a state of emergency, and we'll get information on exactly what that means in just a moment. We are joined now in the studio by Dr. Gerald Post. He's with George Washington University, the director of a terrorism unit there, and you recently testified in a trial in New York involving terror. Tell us about the trial where you testified and other work you've been doing in this area.
Well, the aspect about the trial, which was very striking, was the simultaneous attack on 2 U.S. embassies in Tanzania and in Kenya. And I am sure the highest degree of probability associated with this attack, which had remarkable coordination and logistical sophistication, would be Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda group, which was the same group responsible for our embassy.
In other words, you were
bombings.
saying you were immediately struck by the simultaneous attacks and the similarity in what we saw with the African embassy
again,
attacks.
2 cities, multiple sites within Washington, as well as the World Trade Center. This is not something that a small organization could have done.
And many people look at Osama bin Laden and they see the video that we have him and the pictures of they have him and they just see a man. When you think of a terrorist organization, you don't think in terms of the complexity, the hijacking of 3 or perhaps 4 commercial jetliners within the space of an hour, and then these simultaneous attacks. Is his organization capable of pulling off this incredibly complex operation?
I believe so, and as I came to understand through my interviews of a number of the terrorists in the earlier embassy, I was very struck by the layers of organization, the specialists, and their capacity to develop resources within a country to do this.
As I said, we often hear about his training that goes on. Does it include the training of pilots of 767s?
That I don't know about, but I would assume it does.
That it does?
He comes from a wealthy Saudi Arabian family, I believe, Osama bin Laden. But that kind of wealth couldn't bankroll this kind of operation. Where would the money, and of course we're assuming it's bin Laden, we don't have any evidence to that point at this stage of the game, but the amount of money it would take to pull something like this off has to dwarf even one man's resources, wouldn't it?
No, not true.
Really?
No, his resources could well support this. And in fact, this is the feeling of helplessness that, after all, there's the one remaining superpower to that what a group of individuals planning together, and an incapacity to detect through our intelligence, an incapacity really rationally to deter or to retaliate. It's an asymmetric conflict at its worst, and very, very difficult for us to manage.
Dr. Post, we should point out that you've been studying this for years. You were with us many times during the Persian Gulf conflict, trying to help us sort out. You've also worked on psychological profiles of terrorists. Help us understand, how do you recruit someone for this kind of attack?
Well, one of the things I've been particularly impressed by, and we're just pulling together a final report where we've interviewed some 33 Middle Eastern terrorists concerning in particular their decision-making, the group dynamics, and their attitudes towards mass casualties. One of the striking and chilling things, and these are not psychologically abnormal individuals, that's the first thing to see.
In other words, they're not insane, you're saying?
In fact, people who are emotionally unstable are expelled from the groups because they're a security risk. They are caught up in a tide of radical Islam, where, in fact, in some areas, the individual who doesn't join a group is the abnormal one. And I was very struck by the nature of the attitudes towards Ummah, the Islamic community, the need to help Islam's under attack. And for many of them, it is really a peculiar kind of defensive aggression. Striking back against those that they feel is victimizing them.
So the attitude toward mass casualties is what?
The attitude towards mass casualties, and we ought to remember, with all our preoccupation in this country about weapons of mass destruction, this was not nuclear, biological, chemical.
Right.
These were bombs, these were hijacked planes, as were the embassies there, and that's really where our attention needs to go. But the attitude was there was no red line in terms of morality. If that is what was felt to help the cause, they would do that. But most of them said, in fact, just give me a good Kalashnikov, but if I was told to do this, I would have no qualms about doing it.
That they would do it. They would carry out the order. Right?
Yeah.
Dr. Post, in the wake of the attacks on the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, we launched a cruise missile assault on suspected terrorist training camps in Afghanistan and I believe Sudan. But that also demonstrates the difficulty of hitting back, and no doubt there will be Americans, if we do determine this is a terrorist attack, will want to hit back. But the difficulty is hitting back. I'll let you turn that off.
That's okay.
The difficulty.
We're sure Dr. Post is much in demand, so hold on, I was going to turn off his cell phone. There we go.
But once again, the difficulty is it's not a conventional war. You can't just take out an army division or something like that. It's hard to strike back.
Well, that's exactly right. Not only that, the striking back doesn't really deter. It demonstrates the strength of the group, and if anything, it mobilizes their strength. So this isn't like conventional warfare. The Taliban, I understand.
In other words, the U.S. is in a box, so I don't want to just gloss over that point. And responding to this is difficult. Right? Having a response that is meaningful is difficult.
That's exactly right. And I think it's well to remember terrorism is